Okay, so today we're off on our bus stop fishing number 4, and today we're going over to St Brides. Now, I was going to take the fishing gear with me, but I haven't, because yesterday down on the Usk I talked to a local fisherman and said St Brides isn't worth fishing on any tides lower than 12 metres. Now, we're currently in a Neap tide situation, so today's high tide at St Brides is 9.5 metres. It's just not fishable. So I'm going to go down there anyway, and I'm going down to do a recce of the seabed and various locations. So we're catching a DRT 31 bus to St Brides. You have to book that a day in advance. It's the old dial to ride, and the DRT 31 leaves the bus station. I've booked it for midday, so it's here outside waiting. No driver yet, but it'll be there. It's only 5 minutes still to go, so it'll be there. And that's going to take me down to St Brides Lighthouse, and I booked the return journey for 4:15. So I'm going to have about 4 hours having a wander around and just have a look at what's what at St Brides. Okay, so here we are. We're in St Brides at the Lighthouse pub and at the steps. It's an hour and a half before high tide, and it's supposed to be 9.5 metre tide, and it looks perfectly fishable to me. So it does tend to tell you that you shouldn't really believe what anybody tells you. It's not too far out at all, and there's still an hour and a half of incoming tide left. So these are the steps. I'd have been more than happy to just wander down the steps and fish off the stones there. Obviously it looks a little bit snaggy, because it's got all of the breakwater, but it's fishable. So I don't know why the guy said that you wouldn't even be able to see the water on a 9.5 tide. He said you know, if you go there you should take your binoculars with you. So don't believe what people tell you when you need to, and it's probably a better fish on a 12 metre tide and above, but it's certainly not unfishable on a 9.5 metre tide. But let's have a walk around anyway. I've got 4 hours before the bus comes to pick me up. It's about a 25-minute trip out from Newport bus station to the car park at St Brides. You need to get the DRT 31. You book that normally a day in advance, but because today's a Monday, I had to book on Friday. But I am really disappointed that I didn't bring my fishing gear, and I think next time I shan't worry too much about what other people say. I'll come out and find about it myself. But let's have a wander around, and let's have a few pictures and some videos of various locations which look like they could be really fishable next time I come out here. So as we come over the steps from the car park, we got the steps down to the water in front of us. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to take a left and walk upstream and see what's around there. We'll have a few videos and look at the seabed, good fishing spots, and then I'll come back down and we'll go right and we'll go down towards the left hand Usk Lighthouse. But let's start walking upstream and seeing what we've got. That could be a good fishing location. Well, we've got a nice big platform, big concrete or stone slab here, which looks out as a good location for the tides in a little bit further. I mean, if at these low tides you would need to clamber down the rocks to get down to your line, and you are going to have quite a lot of snagging, so I probably wouldn't fish here on a very low tide. I'd probably stick to the to where the steps are. But there's also a stone gurn or guide, or whatever it is, out there. There's a bit of a breakwater, and that looks really promising. So we'll have a wander down there and have a look and continue round the mouth of the Usk and up towards the power station and the turbines. But I would happily fish off down off those steps in these conditions that we've had a problem, especially as it's a bit overcast. Now fishing is good when it's overcast. So let's have a look at that gurn. Okay, so we're at the gurn now, a little breakwater, and there's a nice little sandy beach there. Now I don't see that, even though to now before high tide, and we're on 9.5 metre tide, I don't see that as being unfishable. I would quite happily get onto that little beach area and fish until the tide pushes me up the rocks and onto the sea wall. So that's a nice location. There's going to be, it doesn't look as though there's even particularly a lot of stones down there. You know, down this way we've got a lot of stones, and if you don't want to drop some bottom tackle on there to get hung up and snared up, I would probably use a soft plastic paddle tail and do some lure fishing, because after all the bass is in now, the bass are here, and bass will take lures without a problem. But that's a location I would not be at all worried about fishing on a 9.5 metre tide. So let's forget about Neap tides not being good for St Brides. Obviously if there's crowds here and you get pushed out, then there might be problems finding suitable locations. But on a day like today, there's plenty of places to fish on a 9.5 Neap tide. So let's carry on up around and see what else. I mean, as long as you're steady on your feet and you don't mind clambering down this sea wall, which isn't too far at all, and you can get onto that beach, you've got a great little place for fishing. Okay, so I'm on the other side of this little gurn here. Yeah, that's a beach, very easy to clamber down, only a few feet to go over some rough rocks. This is the other side, and again, you know, it's an hour before high tide, and even though it's a 9.5 metre tide, it's perfectly fishable. I'd have no problems at all getting onto there, setting up my rods and fishing. So let's go up, let's go and check out that other gurn and see what it's like on that that bend in the estuary. Okay, so here we are at that second gurn. That first one down there is about 5 to 10 minutes walk away from the Lighthouse car park. This one's probably about 15-minute walk away. It's a little bit more of a scramble, but not that much more of a scramble than the first one. And again, some really nice places to fish. You know, you could easily fish off here. It's probably about 40 minutes before high tide, so it's going to come up a little bit more, and it's perfectly fishable. So don't worry too much about being on a Neap tide. This is what it's like on a 9.5 metre, so quite a low tide. That's the new measurement, not us sold at 1.7 metre. This is a straightforward off the tide tables by the BBC, where it states 9.5. So to get our bearings, that there is the Usk estuary. That's over there is the power station by the wetlands. Wetlands is just down there, down the side. Here we have Newport docks, and the River Ebro estuaries are around there somewhere. Coming across, you have here the Severn estuary, and coming down, just down here, is Bristol Channel. So sea's a little bit, it's not even rough. I mean, what we have at the moment is a westerly wind, so it's quite a warm wind. It's overcast. Conditions are really perfect for a bit of bass fishing. The bass are on the way in. There's been a few caught up at the transporter bridge, which is just about there. So bass will be down here. Been a few cods caught, I've been told, and also some conger eel. But it is bass season, So it's a good weather conditions, good sea conditions. Just a shame, and I'm really annoyed that I didn't bring my fishing gear. There is a guy fishing up there. I'll go and have a chat to him. But 15-20 minute walk and you're on the mouth of the Usk. It's a level walk, so you can easily bring down a trolley. My trolley would cope with this without any problems at all. So let's carry on. We'll go up a little way and then we'll head back and have a look down at the other side of the Lighthouse car park after having a bit of lunch at the pub. Okay, so about 5 minutes walk up from that Gurn, we have another one. Very gentle and easy clambering over some rocks, and you could easily fish off there without too much of a problem. You could go down Cast Off and then just come up here and do your rest. But there is another guy fishing just over the other side of the Gurn, so I'll have a chat and see what the situation is. That there is the mouth of the Usk and the Severn again, so let's go and have a chat to him. Okay, so here we are. We're at the White Lighthouse. It's about as far to the left as I'm going to walk now. So let's have a look at that. Just here is the mouth of the Ebra, or the Ebby estuary. That's the Usk estuary, and over there is the Severn estuary, and out into the Bristol Channel. Now the guy who was fishing just down here, that I just had a chat to, he was saying that any tide really is fishable. On the lower tides, like maybe the 8 metres, 8.5 metre tides, you'll be able to fish about either 1 hour either side of high tide. So you can get a couple of hours fishing in. On today's sort of tide, a 9.5 metre, you should be able to do it 1.5 hours on either side, so you should get 3 hours fishing. And on a normal tide, about the 12 metre mark, you should get a couple of hours either side, and on high tides a little bit more. So I could easily have done my 3 hours fishing session. Today I arrived at about just 1 hour and 40 before high tide, and I could have fished through till from 10 till about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock without a problem. But hey ho, that's the way it is. Next time I'll remember that a 9.5 metre tide and above will give me a good 3 hours fishing on either side. So really nice weather. Not too sure. I see a nice little sandbank down there. I'll have to do a bit of exploring on Google Maps for that. Don't know if you can get down there because I think it looks like it's part of Newport Docks, and Newport Docks is closed. But let's wander back along the seawall this time. You got your reinforced sea bank, a little bit of a floodplain, and then we have the seawall. So we'll wander back down to the lighthouse. I'm going to have a bit of lunch in the pub, and then after that we can walk down to the other side, turning right at the seawall, and see what's down there. But I'm just looking down here now at this little bit of a sluice or a dike or whatever it is, thinking, my god, there must be a fair decent pike in there. It looks perfect pike territory. So whether that's sort of private land or not, I don't know. It probably belongs to the farmer, so I shan't go fishing there. But yeah, so Brides, no problem on low tides. So let's go get some lunch. Okay, I am really impressed with this sort of agricultural channel that is running alongside the seawall. It's just perfect pike territory, it really is. So I'm going to have to do a bit of research, find out who owns it, and find out if fishing is permitted because it is just wonderful, wonderful pike territory. Fairly still water, lots of reeds. The water's a little bit green. I got a bit of a aquatic plant life in it. Generally just a great place for pike. Obviously if it's a overflow from if the sea breaches a wall, it might be a bit salty, but I don't think the tide comes up that high or we have that many storms for that to happen. So I think it is just drainage water from the fields, because the agricultural land here is lower than sea level, and that goes down through the I think is it the Carwent levels and the Chepstow levels, and down that way where the land now is lower than the sea because of farming taking so much topsoil off and being washed away. But yeah, I'll do a research and see if we can do fishing down here, because it would be perfect location for a bit of pike. Okay, again, you know, this is just beautiful drainage ditches. I now remember it's not the agricultural drainage ditch. There are drainage ditches, but it's because of peat cutting that brought the land below sea level. So in medieval times there was a lot of peat cutting, take down the land levels, and I think it's called the Gwent levels or something like that. But it stretches all the way down almost to through Maygill and beyond, where there used to be big peat cutting fields for fuel and building and stuff. And as the land drops, they had to dig drainage ditches to protect from flooding and stuff like that. But beautiful location to do a little bit of lure fishing for predators, and bound to be plenty of predators in areas like this. But anyway, I'm off to the pub, to the Lighthouse Inn, for my lunch, and then after that we'll do a right and spend an hour just exploring the Bristol Channel end of St Brides. Okay, so here we are back at the steps at the Lighthouse car park just before going for lunch. It's about 2 minutes off high tide. There's still another 2 minutes to go, and it's a 9.52 metre tide. So ample water for fishing, especially if you go down towards the left. I haven't looked at the right yet, but we'll go to the right after I've had something to eat. But this is a location, the situation, 2 minutes off high tide. So fishing off the steps is perfectly reasonable. Okay, so we're back on our walk. It's about 40 minutes after high tide, and we've just turned right from the steps, and there's still good water, so we're going to walk up, maybe up to about that headland up there somewhere before we head back. So maybe about 40 minutes down the coast, and see what sort of fishing is like down this side when you turn right at the seawall from the Lighthouse car park. Right, a little way up, only about 5 minutes up along the coast. We've got a nice little stone stroke concrete platform, and remember this is a Neap tide of 9.52, and it's just beginning to fall a little bit now, half an hour after high tide. There's quite a lot of rocks, you know, the protection, but you can certainly fish off it. You can go down and cast out and then just clamber a little bit way up. It doesn't look Might not be the easiest. I think definitely if you go left, you got much better access to the water, but it's still doable over turning right. But let's carry on. Okay, about 5 maybe 10 minutes walk down from the inn, you come to this first set of pier rooms, I suppose they are, and you got your second set down there. But at this first set, you got a really nice set of steps that goes down to pretty much the water level, and you've only got that little small piece of pebble or boulder enforcement that you can easily scramble over to get to the water. Most of the embankment to the right is actually quite steep and quite deep, so not a particularly good idea for fishing on these low tides. If you go to the left, it's a lot more shallower, the boulder reinforcements, and there's a few places you can actually get down quite close, especially at the Gers, and also right up by the White Lighthouse, by the Usk and Deborah tributaries. You can actually fish off the rocks, and it's not too far down, certainly not as steep or as deep as on this side. So let's carry on up. You know, there's one good spot depending on the tides and how many people are here. Okay, so down to the second run of wooden stakes, which I presume used to be a pier of some sort, or jetty. Just a bit further down from that last one. There's really nothing fishable down here if you turn right, apart from those set of steps at that last wooden jetty we passed. There was a nice place for fishing, but apart from that, there's really not a lot of opportunity when you're working a Neap tide, unless you want to do a lot of clambering down rocks, which isn't always a great idea. So I would certainly say that on a Neap tide, anything below say 12 metres, that's without adding any Newport special measurements on, just a straightforward 12 metres off the BBC tide table. Always best to go to the left, and you should find some good locations for fishing. If you go to the right, it's going to be really difficult, but I'm going to go up there and see if I can walk along the sea wall down that way and see if there's anything just beyond that headland down there. But let's carry on. Ooh, look at that, just climbed up to the top of the seawall and we're back at that drainage channel. That is just such a beautiful channel. It's bound to have pike in, that is. I mean, it's centuries old. It's clean, plenty of reeds. There must be a pike in there or two. We'll have to find out who owns it and whether it's open for fishing or not. But let's take a walk around this headland on the sea wall and see what's on the other side of that. Well, I'm on top of that sea wall and that looks really nice. There's a bit of a gravelly beach area just down there. Obviously it's only going to be at Neap tides that this is going to show, because on from like a 12 metre tide it's going to flow well over that. On a Neap tide, how you'd get to it I don't know. I suppose you're going to have to walk to the edge of there and clamber over all of those reinforcement boulders and down onto that beach, because I don't see any other way. You don't want to be climbing over this wall here. You would have to clamber over those boulders and come down, and it looks like a 9.5 tide. It looks like it's only going to come about halfway up that beach, so anything up to about maybe 9.6, 9.7 tides, you should be able to fish off there without a problem. It's just having to clamber down that's all. And if you're young and fit and healthy, you can probably do that. I'm 16, a little bit unsteady on my feet, so I probably won't. But yeah, there's an opportunity there, depending on how fit you are and on whether you want to clamber down over a boulder rock face. But that's only for very low tides, otherwise you could end up being cut off and having to retreat up the rocks and over the wall. But yeah, it's a location that could be done. Okay, so let's just have another look at that beach area again from the wall from the other side. I mean, it looks pretty snag free, so that would be a really nice location if you sort of fish light. I mean, you'd have to fish light because you couldn't get clambering over those rocks with a trolley and baskets and everything like that. If you just take a couple of rods and maybe a small backpack or shoulder pack for your baits, you should be able to set up there on the low tide. And watch that, look at the colour of the difference in sand. This is a 9.5 metre tide. Any higher and you could have to chase yourself up the rocks to the sea wall, but on those very low tides it's definitely a good fishable location. Okay, so let's just have one last look at that beach area. You would need to can I get this? There's the let's try to do that. You'd have to clamber down that little section there of rocks, which isn't too far to go down, and it's not too steep, and the boulders are pretty big. Again, 9.5 is about the most you'd want to be able to fish off that beach, because if you look at the colour line, that line is almost touching the rock face, so you do still have a thin sliver of beach when the tide's fully in at 9.52. It's currently about an hour and a half after high tide. It looks like the best location would be right over by the jetty, because if you come down here it's quite gently sloping and all of this is practically just mud now, but you've still got a reasonable depth up over that section, so you could fish an hour and a half either side of a 9.52 tide on that beach section. Don't even attempt it on anything bigger, and certainly if it's a normal tide, you know, the normal tide comes up to here, you'll be totally stranded and under about 10 foot of water, so don't even bother that. But on a 5.2 you should be able to do it, but obviously no guarantees, and just keep your wits about you. If you stay down towards that rock area, down the bottom down there, you've got an escape route up and back onto the floodplain above you. So if you're up to it, that's a good location. But I just wanted to give a bigger picture of that. Certainly more water over that end where the wood pier is than over this end, which is a lot more muddy, a lot more sandy, and you're going to lose water a lot earlier. So that's our second location. So apart from that one, the only other place you can fish turning right on a low tide was those steps by that other wooden jetty remnants. So always go to the left on low tides. Okay, so we've walked down along the path for about 40 minutes or so, and if you turn the right at the lighthouse and walk down the path that way, there's not a lot of opportunity to fish on a low tide, on a Neap tide. You've got those steps by that one set of jetty, and if you're young and fit, as I was 20 years ago, you could clamber over the rocks and get down to that beach. But anything over a 9.5 tide, I wouldn't look at that beach as being an option, because it'll be up to the rocks and up to the sea wall. But anything below 9.5, you should be okay. So on the Neap tide, what I'd suggest is when you walk down from the Lighthouse car park, you do a left and walk along there, and within about 20 to 30 minutes walk in that sort of stretch, there's a good selection of places for you to fish without too much of a problem. But yes, definitely fishable on Neap tides, certainly at 9.5, which is what it is today. There's no problems at all in finding the location to fish from if you turn left, and there's a couple of locations if you turn right. But that's about it for today. I'm going to have a break, have a cup of coffee, take in the views, and then head back for the buzz, which is going to pick me up at about 4:15 to go back to Newport. But it was a nice day out. Still, I'm still very upset that I didn't bring my fishing rods with me, and it does goes to show that you shouldn't really listen to anybody about fishing. Some people can talk trash, so go there, suss it out for yourself, make your own decisions. But I'd say yes, St Brides is perfectly fishable on Neap tides, particularly the sort of larger Neap tides like we have today, where it's 9.5. I should imagine they'll go down all the way down to 8.5 shouldn't be a problem. And that is of course using just normal tide tables that's published by the BBC, rather than any special local adding-ons. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you'll tune in for the next one. And next time we come down here to St Brides, I'll have my fishing rods out, and we'll see what we can get. Definitely bass season, so it's well worth a trip out. But tomorrow I think I'll be back at the Usk, because I don't have the time to come down here. I'll have time for a couple of hours on the Usk, and that'll be it. But please like, subscribe and share if you enjoyed this video, and I'll be putting out a lot more videos on the bus stop fishing series and various locations to get to using public transport, and I might include a couple of train runs as well. But the next thing I've got to do is find out who owns that drainage ditch and can I fish there for pike. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.